I mean, wherever we went. And one day I told you the story, and Dick said, "We're stars." And I said, "There's only one station. They have to watch us." That was my song.
This business eats money and picks its teeth with $1,000 bills.
It was the first station in the country built for color from the ground up.
The Big Ape was not organized like any station I have ever worked in before.
And I wound it up, and I thought, well, I wonder how I did.
This is an oral history interview with Marlene Schneider Rasmussen, and one of our Jacksonville Broadcaster Association interviews. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And we're going to talk about what some people might call the old days.
The good old days.
The good old days, when you were the first woman in the newsroom at WJXT TV4.
Yeah.
What was that like?
I was scared to death. And when I look back on it now, my clothes were totally inappropriate. Now, maybe nowadays, it were short skirts that we wore in college. I had graduated in August, and I started here the day after Super Bowl that year, '72. And I was just, college didn't prepare me for the real world. But
college being the
University of Florida, yeah. And I was very lucky. I had interviewed for a job at one of the other stations when I knew I was getting ready to graduate. And I did not get that job, but while I was in Jacksonville, I managed to set up an interview with Bill Grove, then news director here at JXT. And he was very nice and very easy to talk to. The other interview had been a studio, test, and I was like so scared. But he was just kind of grandfatherly, and he was very nice to me. And he said, "I'll get back to you," and then he didn't. So I committed to work at the University of Florida for the fall semester that year to help teach a cinematography course. And while I was home in my hometown in Miami, the phone rings at my parents, and I answer, and the voice says, "I'm trying to get a hold of Marlene Schneider." And I said, "Speaking?" And he said, "This is Bill Grove up in Jacksonville." I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, seems I was supposed to hire you a while back, and I forgot." And I said, "You're kidding, really?" And I was so excited, but I don't know why I didn't just say, "I'm going to blow off the University of Florida and take this job." But I said, "I have committed to the University of Florida to help teach a course." He said, "Well, when will you be available?" I said, "After the first of the year." He said, "See you January 2nd. And that first day, they wrote a script for me and put me on the air. I did a stand-up along the St. Johns River with the City Hall it's my background, and I don't remember what it was about. I didn't write it, someone else wrote it for me, but that was my debut.
And by the way, you do an excellent Bill Grove.
Oh, we kind of mumbled a little bit,
So, and right away, you started covering
they put me at City Hall right away.
Forth. Yeah.
And it was hard because I don't think I'd had enough civics courses to prepare me to cover local government, and I had some bumps along the way of things. And I had a Times Union reporter who I've now remembered his name, Frank Young. He was very sympathetic, and I thought if he was going off in a direction, I better make sure I saw what he was up to, because there might be a story there. And he would sometimes say, "Come on, Marlene, come on, come on."
So it was kind of a friendly competition.
He was very friendly. I mean, I'm going on the air, before he is, no matter what I have. And he was a mentor. I've had several, and he was very understanding and helpful. And I just had to get my feet wet,
And you learned a lot about, after all, you will recall that this was a fairly new government.
Consolidated government, yeah, big city council, big.
19 members.
Yeah, 19 members. And I remember a few of them, Joe Carlucci and Joe Forshee and Jake Godbold, and they were all pretty good to me. I mean, they treated me with respect, even though I was pretty young and inexperienced. But,
good politicians figure that out, don't they?
Yeah, I guess they do.
They don't, they help reporters.
Well, I think those guys wanted me to get the story straight, better than going off.
It's better for them.
Yeah, yeah. And they gave me pretty good access. So it was a learning curve, but in this market and with the folks here in our newsroom at that time, there were several of us. There was another young reporter fresh out of college, and it was where you're going to make your mistakes and learn your craft and get the hang of it. Because we were still shooting film back then, and that meant that was a hot splice that we all sat in the newsroom and prayed that our hot splices would hold through the projector, because that wasn't fun. Then we moved to Mylar splices, and then eventually, being the smallest of the post-Newsweek stations, they tried out the videotape on us, because we didn't require so much equipment. So we were the first ones to go with the videotape, and then then there wasn't the pressure to not screw up. So you had a chance to get it, so you were happy with your presentation.
And that had an impact on deadlines.
Yeah, it was, you didn't have to get it back get it in the soup, as we used to call the developing chemicals. Yeah, it kind of modernized it. I guess that was the first step in modernizing our operation.
And so, can you recall any other interesting City Hall stories? Mayor Tanzler, Hans Tanzler was mayor?
He was the mayor, and I didn't know him very well, but we had done some stories on him, questioning his relationship with some developers of the Bay Meadows area. And I don't really ever know, I'm not sitting in judgment on anyone. So sometimes it was a little strained in the mayor's office. But we were the dominant station. He kind of had to deal with me. But my worst experience, and the one that you all forgave me and let me make that mistake and go on, was I was covering the State of the City address that Mayor Tanzler was giving to the council. And I had a sound man down there. We were shooting film. And I wrote down everything: more money for police, more money for schools, more money for this. And I went back and did my story for the 11 o'clock news. Well, the next morning, Frank Young from the Times Union had this headline: Mayor proposes tax increase. I totally missed that. I did not know what ad valorem meant. I totally missed it. He was going to pay for these increases to these departments by an ad valorem tax increase. Well, the then news director, Ernie Mastriani, called me and he goes, "Were you at the same meeting?" Were you? I went, "Yes, I was." He said, "Don't cry. Don't you dare cry." I went, "Ooh." And the more he said, "Don't cry," the more I was about ready to tear up. But he said, "Just leave, go." So he never sent me home or penalized me in any way, but I learned a very valuable lesson, and that, pay attention, and if you don't know, ask.
So Ernie and Bill Grove and others were good mentors.
Absolutely, yeah. Bill Grove was kind of the fatherly type. He wasn't that active in the newsroom day to day, in the preparing of scripts and all that, but Ernie was. And we had a assignment editor named Brad Davis, and then John Thomas was our 11 o'clock anchor, and he would help us write, and then eventually Tom Wills came on the scene, and he was an excellent writer, and any of the scripts of mine that were well written, Tom had a hand in. But Ernie quite often would say, there was another reporter named Bill Baxter. We had known each other at University of Florida, and Ernie would walk down the hallway. He goes, "Oh, gee whiz." He said, "These gray hairs are Baxter's. These gray hairs are Schneider's." And he had quite a head of hair, as we all know. And so I said, okay. But he was, he gave me a chance to make my mistakes and learn the business. And I owe it to them, really. The opportunity and the chance to live through some of the mistakes.
And how long did you stay at Channel 4?
I was at Channel 4 from 72, I think, 7 years. We had several gals came on after that, and then we had one gal, Eileen Jones, who I became very good friends with, and we were both single gals, and we would travel together, and she was the first female anchor here at this station. She anchored weekends. And then when she transferred, I think she went to Alabama. I'm not actually sure where she went. But they split up the anchoring job for the weekends. I didn't really want to do Saturday and Sunday, so I said I would do Sunday, and one of the male reporters, John Nicholson, did Saturdays. So I had my days off. I figured this out. My days off were Friday and Saturday, and I didn't have to come in till later on Sunday. But and so I got some anchoring experience here too.
How much did you know about Jacksonville? You grew up in Miami and went to the University of Florida nearby.
I didn't know anything about it. I did not know anything. It was a, whole new learning experience. But
With this relatively new government?
yeah, I don't know that I appreciated how new the government was. I knew it was unusual, having come from Miami with a county commission and a city and all that. I don't know that I appreciated what a experiment it was, but it seemed to be working to me. I mean, I didn't really, at that stage, notice growing pains. The sheriff functioned fine, and the state attorneys was over there, and that, I mean, it all seemed to work.
It may be helpful for people to, as they're watching this, to remember what the 70s were like in terms of television. There wasn't the ability to watch stuff on demand that we have today, and
We didn't have as much
videotaping.
competition for that hour of time.
You watched television or you missed it
Yeah.
and caught it on reruns.
Right. Well, what I think about post-Newsweek and what I learned from their tutelage was it wasn't always, when you did a story, when we decided to cover a story, it wasn't always because it was something, it was glamorous and we could wow you with. We looked at it, what do people need to know? And I think that's what's changed about the modern day, is that it's what can we get them to sit down and watch? And then a lot of the popular sitcoms like MASH back in those days and all that were going out on syndication. So the other stations that weren't running news, the UHFs, were running programming. And so we that was the first beginning of a little bit of competition, and you tried to jazz things up a little. And now it's, of course, created a monster.
But there wasn't the fantastic competition there is today with so many cable channels.
No cable. And we were, it was us 12 and 17. And that was it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, PBS.
Yeah.
But they weren't, a competitor in that sense.
And Channel 4 was
The leader.
dominant in the ratings.
By far, yeah.
So you had a good first step in your career at Channel 4, and then what came next?
I stayed here long. Well, my father had been very ill in Miami, and I didn't consider moving till he passed away in '79. And then I think in '80, I transferred to our station, same company, in Hartford, Connecticut. Now, I'm a Miami girl, and by the time I transfer up there, it's March, and there's not a winter coat to be found anywhere. So it was a shock to the system, the climate.
Yeah.
But it was a great opportunity. I went up there to anchor the noon show, and we did an hour newscast back then. And so that was a lot of airtime. And then I was the second backup reporter at the state capitol, which was within walking distance. So that was a good experience too, all the way around. And I eventually anchored, then I added the 5:30 newscast with a guy named Jerry Brooks, and then I eventually moved on to the 6 and the 11.
And apart from the climate, you enjoyed the
Well,
work.
I like the change of seasons. When they call them crocuses, I had never seen a crocus and a jonquil and and the forsythia. I didn't even know how to pronounce forsythia. Just blooms bright yellow along the highways. The seasons up there are fantastic. Miami, hot and not so hot, kind of like where I am now in Tampa. But I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. It was a nice change. I don't want to live there permanently.
And the station in Hartford was a post-Newsweek station.
Yes, it was, and also the dominant station.
And so, and there was that meant something, that there was going to be the same kind of serious attitude toward covering news, investigative reporting, and...
I've never been an investigative reporter. I've been a political reporter. So we had a gentleman named Don Smith, who was our chief political reporter. but sometimes there was just so much going on, and so when I got done with the noon show at 1 o'clock, I'd walk over to the Capitol and do what he didn't have time to get to or something like that. So we were a good team in covering. But political coverage was stressed. I mean, that's what people needed to know. And it wasn't fluff. And, you know, we always, when they produced a newscast, there was always a story at the end called the kicker. And that was your fluff, your funny human interest or clever story. But that was not usually part of the overall broadcast.
So you adjusted to, you didn't start out wanting to be an anchor necessarily. You were
No, I just,
a reporter.
Yeah, I was a reporter. I think I should have stayed a reporter. I think I liked getting out of the building more. But the money was in anchoring. So I got, you know, swayed by the, you know, you got you got your picture on the billboard. There's just, you know, it's a little more glamorous. So I kind of fell for that. So, but that was a good experience too. I had some great co-anchors.
And next in your career?
Well, I got kind of tired of snow in March, and I decided to try a big market, and I had a good friend that had been a producer at FSB in Hartford, and she had moved to New York, so I would go down and spend some time. I did not care for New York City. I couldn't imagine working in New York City or living in New York City. I had a horse back then and a car, and I said, So I got a job in Los Angeles at a station. KHJ was one of the independents, and they eventually were purchased by Disney, so they are KCAL now, I think, KCAL. But they put on a 9 o'clock newscast. So I was living in Orange County with some friends, and it was quite a drive. So the 9 o'clock newscast was great because then I didn't have to go in during rush hour.
Right.
I don't know how people in California, I couldn't, you know, after a year and a half, I said, I am in the wrong time zone. I'm in the wrong time zone. So I had a news director, assistant news director in Hartford, who was now, I had an agent then, because LA is very unionized. Send these tapes out, I see where you can get me. And I got a late night phone call one night. He says, hey, this is Ken Middleton. I said, Ken? He was my assistant news director in Hartford. He said, yeah, I'm in Tampa now. He said, I didn't know you were in LA. I said, well, yeah, well, he said, you want out? I said, yeah. So he hired me to come back to Florida, which I wasn't sure I really wanted to do, but I knew I wasn't going to go back to Miami, but I didn't really know that much about Tampa either, to be honest with you. And I worked there for 4 years till I got pregnant and kind of needed to have a less, well, I was hired there to do the noon news, and then a new news director replaced Ken, assigned me the morning show at 6 a.m., and that was not a shift that I ever got used to. It was just not a morning, that early of a morning. That's more like the night. You got to go in at, 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're going on the air at 6. You got a producer and a crew overnight writing scripts, but you got to go in and kind of fine-tune them for your style. I just really hated that. So eventually I retired. And then I just did, production work and private on-air stuff. Not TV, video work.
And I guess growing up in Miami and working in Jacksonville and Tampa Bay area, you've had a pretty good sampling of life in Florida. All you need is Orlando and the Panhandle.
No Orlando and no Pensacola. Well, Miami, they called it back then.
Yeah.
It was totally different. Sleepy little city. My mom worked for an OBGYN, and quite often the patients from the Everglades would pay in stone crab or eggs or something. It was a sleepy little town back then, and not the glam city it is now. And I just didn't want to live there again. That's like going home. Tampa reminded me of the Miami I grew up in, because we have the cafe con leche and the Cuban coffee, and I like all that, but I didn't want to have to speak Spanish. And once our daughter was born, my mom moved up from Miami to Tampa, where she lived out her years. So I remember I was in the newsroom in Tampa, and all of a sudden one of our reporters comes up to me and he says, we've been waiting for you, because all you new people, because I was from LA, they just thought, think you're hot stuff. He says, we've had the producer give you names like Micanopy and Okeechobee, and he says, and you got them right. He said, did you study before you came here? I said, Mark, I'm a Gator, you know. And he went, oh, I said, I'm from Miami. I went to Florida, you know.
Right.
First job in Jacksonville.
But
So, yeah.
you understand what that, why that question would be asked.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, how many people call it my canopy first or whatever?
Or even in Jacksonville, they sometimes don't pronounce the name of the county correctly. Duval.
I
instead
never
of
pronounced
Duval.
I never pronounced
I
it
didn't
correctly.
say you did, but some
I called it Duval. Oh, they said Duval?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
People who don't know.
Oh, I didn't. That's not.
Yeah.
That wasn't a hard one for me. I think I already knew that.
Well, you did have a certain edge there, being with
Yeah.
your roots in Florida.
Well, yeah.
How did you, how and when did you decide that journalism, broadcasting would
That's
be
a good question. I was there for the College of Education, and you had to take one TV course in the College of Journalism as part of your undergraduate work. And I took beginning television, and I thought, you pull the button and you push the button. How hard can this be? And I had a professor that wasn't easy to talk to, and I got a D, my only D in college ever. I graduated with honors, my only D. And it was all about the tubes and the this, and it was very engineering kind of talk, and I didn't ever get it, and the way he taught it, I never got it. So I took television too. I said, wait a minute now, how hard can this be? And I got an A, and so then I was thinking advertising, because it sounded, back then I wasn't really all about kids, and I thought teaching you need to have some feel for children. And I had this professor, Don Grooms, who you had to take on a news course. University of Florida had WUFT, I think, University of Florida Television, and we did a 15-minute student-produced and operated newscast. So when I took Don Grooms' course, I had to do the newscast. And I screwed up so many times. People said, Marlene, there's still time to transfer back to the College of Education. You're not cut out for this.
Wow.
But Don Grooms came to me and said, I would want you to consider taking this course again as a special study. You'll get credit, and you'll do this, you'll be doing the newscast and on a regular basis and get used to it. And back then, Gainesville didn't have a TV station. If they couldn't pull in the Jacksonville stations, we were it for local news. And that was, I guess, my first mentor. He encouraged me to do that, because there weren't many women doing it, and he believed in me. So that was helpful. I kind of forget. He stopped one time. I'm walking into the newsroom in Connecticut. I walk into the news. Now, Don Grooms was part Cherokee Indian, or Seminole Indian. He was, he had dark hair, he was dark skinned, he was very distinctive. And I walk in one morning at 9 o'clock, and there he is standing in the middle of my newsroom in New England. I said, Professor Grooms, what are you doing here? And he said, well, Marlene, I was driving up the coast with a friend, and I just decided to stop in and see somebody who's making a living out of what I taught him. So he was a character. Very nice man.
And like so many people, you changed majors.
I did.
In college.
That law of the press, we had a female instructor then, and she was a terror. But I managed to get through that, and I took, there were a lot of courses once you've kind of decided you're going into broadcast journalism, and I'm sure that was somewhat in its infancy. Television was only, 20 years old probably by then. So mostly men, young guys in my courses, but it was, I don't know, it was kind of I got bitten by the bug, that WUFT 15-minute newscast, and I was a star if I could just get my words out, which was, you were nervous, and it was easy to mumble jumble. So.
Let's talk a little bit about your family.
Okay.
You met your husband in the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah, I was single for a long time, and my mother was starting to worry, and she was resurrecting past boyfriends that she didn't like. And she'd go, what about that? I said, Mom, you didn't like him. She goes, oh, he wasn't so bad. But when I moved to Tampa, there was a gal I'd gone to college with living there, and we hooked up. She saw me on the air and introduced me to a couple of other people that were in town from Gainesville and that lived in Tampa. And so one of them's husband had a friend going through a divorce. And there was this big fancy party coming up in Tampa called the Pavilion, and it is the party. And so she called me and she said, I'd like to fix you up with my husband's law partner. He's going through a divorce. I said, well, how old is he? She goes, he's our age. I said, oh, he'll want something much younger. And she said, no, he's going to want somebody he can talk to. I said, well, okay. I went out. It was white tie, so I had to have a long dress. I went out. I bought the dress, did not cut the tags off, just in case something fell through. And we met for a dinner ahead of time, and he'd been married that whole time I'd been single. And so he was down in the scotches like no tomorrow because he was nervous. And I thought, well, that's kind of endearing. And he just turned out to be a nice guy. I remember I lived in a high-rise apartment building, and I came down the elevator to meet him for the first time. And I looked around the lobby, and I looked over, and I went, oh he's kind of cute. And he didn't date anybody else. I'm sure everybody told him you can't marry the first person you date after you're divorced. Mm-hmm. But we did, and 26 years later. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And children?
I have one daughter, 24, and she went to the University of Michigan undergrad, and she transferred. When she graduated, she got a master's acceptance at University of Arizona. She is in anthropology with an emphasis on ancient Roman archaeology with the little brush, you know. And when we would take her on vacations someplace nice, and my husband would say, nah, another pile of old rocks, you know. We went through Athens for her 13th birthday, and it was a lot of piles of old rocks over there. But she was fascinated. You
didn't try, or you didn't want her to go into broadcasting?
No. Well, she did come with me when I was doing some video work. She did come with me one time when school was out and I had a taping session, and they sat her down and she read the prompter and all that. And she goes, oh, that's not so hard. Thanks, okay, Claire. But she started to Google some of my, I guess that stuff is still out there. She found a promo for all the crew, all the anchor teams in Hartford. She found that out there somewhere. Mm-hmm. And she found a weather forecast with my weatherman in Hartford named Charlie Bagley. Charlie. I'd say, Charlie, my name is Marlene. I said Marlene. He couldn't hear it. He was so Boston. But he was, they were great people to work with. I've really always pretty much had, not always, pretty much had really good people to work with. Mm-hmm. We're a family. We partied together. We did here in Jacksonville, that's for sure. And I just went by the old bar we used to frequent. Mm-hmm. So it was a good time, I have to say. It wasn't just all hard work. We supported each other. We helped each other, when we had bumps along the road and something didn't turn out right. So I've been very lucky.
When you have the opportunity to talk to young people about a broadcasting career, what kind of advice do you give them?
Wow. I think it's tough now. I don't think I'd be successful in it. I mean, it's changed. It's focus. Like I was saying earlier, we told people what they needed to know, and now it's really entertainment. And the women on the air, when we used to be a rarity, are now probably maybe even in the majority, but we sure do dress different. I had a producer in Connecticut who used to get mad if my bangs touched my eyebrows. No sleeveless tops. I mean, it was, you kind of wore the little bow ties on the things and mostly jackets. And now these gals wear the tight, form-fitting outfits, and I think that's required now. And so I don't know what I'd tell a young person. Depends on if they want to be a star, That's maybe a better way to do it than being a journalist. I'm not sure I would promote TV news as much as I would have when it was more journalism. I don't know that it's as much journalism as it used to be and should be.
So any other thoughts on comparing the broadcasting business of 2017 to
The old days?
1970s?
Wow. Well, I mean, everything's going to change. It has to evolve. Cable was a huge game changer for all those avenues of other product out there to watch, to listen to, you know. So I was telling some folks earlier that I was very, very, very liberal when I first came out of school, as many students are. Back in the day of Kent State and Tiananmen Square, most of those protests were students who kind of believed in a better life. I believed in busing to achieve racial integration. I believed in a colorblind society, that you would say the guy in the plaid shirt, not the black guy or the Asian man. Or I really believed in that, and that's not going to happen in my lifetime, if ever. So the business now is become liberal. I think it's opinion now, not journalism. It's opinion. I was saying earlier that I watch CNN and Fox News, and I flip back and forth to see how they cover the same story. And
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm more conservative now, but I sometimes agree with one point there and one point there. I think our process of vetting candidates has gotten pathetic
People
because
choose the channel that
agrees
pleases
with them. Agrees.
Yeah.
They've already got set ideas, and they can find a channel out there that agrees with their preconceived ideas and biases and such. I think the vetting process for candidates is pathetic, hence what we just went through in November. I don't think anyone doesn't have a skeleton in their closet back in the day, and we're merciless about that. You know, if some in the media don't like you, they'll hammer that and dig up more stuff. And I don't even know what fake news is anymore. I don't really know what that means. There's just so many sources of news that have no authenticity for me. We used to be, we had to have attribution, and we had to be able to say, so-and-so said, and not anonymous sources all the time. They hide behind that now, and they have all, I don't look at all these things on YouTube and online. I do have a Twitter account, and I do kind of listen to his rants, and I wish he wouldn't do that, you know. I'd like there to be a bit more decorum in our Washington politics, but I think they're all out there for themselves. I don't think anybody, as Mr. Smith goes to Washington, to do the right thing anymore. That's gone. They're protecting their power. We're not going to consider a Supreme Court nominee till the next administration. You know, I mean, they just dig in, and I guess they're playing to their own constituency. It's not me. I'm not part of that. But maybe. I think it's a mess out there kind of right now. Now, I don't think it's so bad at the local level, but the national level is disheartening to me a little bit, because it's opinion now. It's opinion. It's not always fact. I don't even know when they're right or they're wrong anymore. I don't know how to verify it. So
that is hard.
Yeah. I mean, you get a lot of opinions, and I guess you choose one that sounds right, but I'm not 100% sure anymore. So my husband and I have some very spirited political debates. Very spirited.
Well, any other thoughts about your career,
Well,
Channel 4?
I think I talked with some folks earlier about the glass ceiling for women, and I think I benefited from the trend now. Or I don't know if I think I got my job because they were starting to open it up for women, and I think this company, Post Newsweek, kind of realized that. I don't know how many they had in Washington or the other stations, Miami, but I know that I got that job probably because Bill Grove was ready to see a girl in the newsroom, and I benefited from that. So sometimes I'm very grateful for that, and I don't really ever minimize that. I never wanted to be in management. I never wanted to be news director, and now there's tons of women doing that. So I don't know where the glass ceiling is in news anymore. There's probably more women on the air now. Well, as many. It's certainly not a question anymore. And I'm not sure that even the diversity is a question anymore. I think it's pretty well represented. I think everybody realizes that. But I was lucky. That was when it started, 1970s. Because we had a string of gals in this station after me. They came and went while I was still here. And the idea was this was the kind of market you could learn. You know, you could.
Not in this building.
The old building. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. You reminded me of a story that we were doing. They were painting our tower here, and we did a story on it. And I kind of forgotten that. I rode the elevator to the top and climbed out to interview the painter.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, my parents didn't want to hear that one too much, but I said, "Oh, well."
You had no acrophobia, fear of
No,
heights.
I get motion sick. So if it had started to sway too much, possibly.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't. That didn't bother me at all. It was exciting actually to be that high up. I thought pretty cool.
Quite a view of the city.
Yes, quite a view.
Yeah.
But the city has changed.
Yeah.
When I lived here, I lived at Bay Meadows, and I rode my bike on the J. Turner Butler because it was only finished to UNF and there was no traffic. It was the safest place to ride a bike in town. And when we had a reunion 10 years ago or so out at the beach, I took it all the way to the beach and saw all the development. So the city has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to call it when we were young and single, J-No Actionville, and I don't think that applies anymore. I think it's pretty much come of age. But there's still the old buildings downtown that I remember coming across the bridge.
Well, Marlene, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was good to connect with all you folks again. Thank you.